Good evening, constant reader. Recently on this channel, we've featured a lot of cats. This cat, that cat, this weird thing. No, not those guys. That's too scary, even for Stephen King. What I'm saying is, we featured a lot of felines, but every dog has his day, and so now it is finally time to talk about CUJO. And there are going to be spoilers ahead, so if you haven't experienced the movie or read the book, you may want to turn back now. There's a long, sad history of movies in which the dog dies, and tears ensue. This is so common in films, even family-friendly films, that there is a website to help prepare you for devastating experiences such as Old Yeller or Where the Red Fern Grows. And then, of course, there's A Dog's Purpose. This is the film where, thanks to the power of reincarnation, the canine protagonist dies 4 different times. CUJO, on the other hand, presents one of the rare times in which you, the audience, are actually rooting for the dog to die, not counting werewolves. Or maybe we're not really cheering for the death of CUJO, because we do feel sorry for him. He can't control the fact that he has rabies. But we do want this snarling beast to be put out of its misery, and we want this poor, terrorized family to be safe. We are never meant to hate CUJO, and that is part of the book's tragedy. This Saint Bernard was a big, lovable sweetheart. At least he was until he chased a rabbit into a cave and was bit by a rabid bat. The disease will go on to change CUJO's gentle nature. It removes all that is kind, playful, and affectionate, and leaves only rage, madness, and pain. Horror movies often play around with our fear of this type of transformation, of becoming something monstrous, something other than ourselves, whether it's demonic possession or the rising of zombies, especially those of the rabid, fast-moving variety of zombies. The fear of a disease turning each of us into something horrid is unfortunately a realistic one. According to the World Health Organization, 59,000 people a year die from rabies. But more than rabies, this has me thinking of dementia-related illnesses, maladies which take a bit longer but can end in a similar way. No longer recognizing your loved ones, confused, angry, scared, even violent. When Tad's parents try to convince the little boy that monsters don't exist, they aren't exactly correct. Monsters are real, and any one of us could become one. But what do we mean by a monster? My favorite word nerd website tells us that monster comes from the Latin monstrum, meaning divine omen, especially one indicating misfortune. As the word monster went on to mean other things, including abnormal in shape or size or deformed. Every culture that I can think of has monsters that are basically a combination of existing animals. The chimera, the griffin, the sphinx, the platypus. Oh wait, that one's real. The tales of scary, violent, hungry things that don't actually exist. So somewhere along the way, many of us have decided that one of the defining qualities of a monster is its status as an imaginary being. Oh, and according to Sesame Street, monsters are also furry. But you know that in the real world, there are scary, violent, angry things.
tigers and bears. Oh my! Lions and tigers and bears. Oh my!
It's just that many of us, maybe not all of us, live in a civilization that allows us to feel detached from the natural world, the world of prey and predator. For many of us, the risk of being mauled by a coke-snorting grizzly or devoured by a man-eating shark is just not on our radar of things that will happen to us today. But then, of course, there are the human monsters. Anyone familiar with true crime might well slap the label of monster onto the Ted Bundys and Jeffrey Dahmers of the world. In Stephen King's universe, Frank Dodd is this type of human monster. He is a serial killer. Featured in the Dead Zone, he terrorizes the town of Castle Rock until psychic John Smith shines a light on his monstrous deeds and helps to end the nightmare. But is it really over? The book CUJO begins with the possibility that Dodd's evil spirit lurks in Castle Rock. In fact, he might be lurking in the closet of 4-year-old Tad Trenton. Over the years, more than a few readers have been confused by the book's beginning, especially if they haven't read The Dead Zone. But even if they are familiar with the sinister Frank Dodd, this intro is a little perplexing. Are we to believe that Dodd's wretched ghost is actually haunting Tad's closet? Is the evil presence meant to be symbolic? Or is the boy having some type of premonition of the horrors that are to come? So, what is happening here? Are there ghosts? ESP powers? Demons? All of these potentially supernatural elements seem to evaporate once the reader is vicariously trapped with the mother and child under the blazing sun, stuck in that god-awful Pinto. At that point, this becomes a story of survival, much more realistic than King's earlier tales. So why begin the book with a bit of hocus pocus? Part of me is tempted to say that the book's beginning is flawed. There's a good chance you already know about this, but the book CUJO is infamous because Stephen King wrote it while he was in the grip of his addiction to drugs and alcohol. He says in his memoir On Writing, "I was drinking a case of 16-ounce tall boys a night, and there's one novel, CUJO, that I barely remember writing at all. I don't say that with pride or shame, only a vague sense of sorrow and loss. I wish I could remember enjoying the good parts as I put them down on the page." So, it would be easy to claim that the book is haphazard, even off balance in places, due to Stephen King being blackout drunk. After all, do we really need pages and pages about the world of cereal commercials? Nope, nothing wrong here. Normally, I love Stephen King's world-building details, but in the book CUJO, I feel like I have learned too much about the ups and downs of the AdWorks company. In fact, I sort of became too emotionally caught up in the advertising subplot. Sure, I'm interested in what happens to the dog and the mom and the kid, but I really want to know what happens with the Sharp cereal account. This might actually be a me problem. Whenever a storyline uses an upcoming business presentation as a plot device, I become way too invested. It's like when a phone rings in a movie and nobody picks up. Drives me crazy. CUJO knows what I'm talking about. And back to this beastly dog and the subject of monsters. In my interpretation, the thing in the closet is a product of the boy's imagination as well as intuition. He has a sense that there is evil out in the world, that danger is out there, monsters are out there. Tad's father, Vic, creates a special poem, a sort of anti-monster chant that he uses as a form of protection. Unfortunately, this is a magic that does not work in the real world. At least it doesn't work against CUJO. And even a mother's love, one of the most sacred of literary devices, proves to be powerless against this monstrous situation. Stephen King, drunken master that he is with this novel, provides all of the ingredients necessary to create a little pocket of hell on Earth. First, there's a bite to the snout that makes a good dog turn bad. Then, Donna needs her car repaired, and the mechanic she uses is way out in the middle of nowhere. The only neighbor within shouting distance is drunken, unreliable, and gobbled up by CUJO. The car dies right after reaching the front yard, the domain of CUJO. So now Donna and Tad are stuck. Also, there is the heat factor. The Pinto becomes a death trap. And shade, water, rescue, they are all out of reach for the Trenton family. If any one of these variables had been different, the disaster would not have been as severe. Side note, I find it hilarious that the Trenton family car is a Pinto, a vehicle infamous for being awful. The heat and the isolation and the broken down car, of course, are not enough to evoke terror. That comes from CUJO himself. By the time Donna and Tad have arrived, this poor creature has developed a taste for blood and a hatred of everything that moves or makes noise. We, of course, are cheering for the humans to prevail, but one of the fascinating aspects of Donna's character is that she is not a saint. She has been cheating on her husband with this guy, Steve Kemp. Of all the characters in this story that should have been eaten by a rabid Saint Bernard, Steve Kemp is at the top of the list. In fact, I think he's the only person on the list. The fact that he is not killed off, that he is never in any danger, he doesn't even show up to the farm, that reveals this story's emphasis on reality. In most scary movies, the dirtbag characters are eventually killed off by the monster. But that is not the case here. And most little kid characters, at least the ones who are the main characters, usually survive. But that is not what happens in CUJO, at least not in the book version. It's true that Tad is not gobbled up by the monster. CUJO does not end the boy's life, but nonetheless the heat and the dehydration take Tad away from his mother forever. It's a devastating ending. The movie, on the other hand, makes a choice much more in line with Hollywood happy endings. The mother vanquishes the monster, and the child's life is saved. The family unit is whole and intact once again, and all is forgiven. There's even a rather cheesy freeze frame image at the end of the film that feels very dated. I do wish they had jumped up into the air. Recently, I asked the Stephen King Book Club community which ending they preferred, the movie's ending or the book's ending. About 70% of you said that the ending of the book was the better, stronger, some of you said more honest ending. And 30% of you felt that the book was way too dark and that Hollywood made the right choice by letting Tad survive. There are a few dated or cheesy moments in this film, but the actors who portray the mother and son deliver authentic performances. So do all the dogs who played CUJO, by the way. Even the puppet and this furry person here did a great job. And because the performances were captivating and quite believable, I don't think that I would want to see Dee Wallace's Donna break down over the loss of her son. So ultimately, I'm thankful that the movie makes this choice. At the same time, the film's ending does not resonate as much with me. As a reader, I am devastated that this little boy isn't saved, but there is a stronger sense of closure in the book, of realism and believability. Oftentimes we read a book to escape from the real world, but sometimes we read so that we can face reality, however harsh, however ugly, however tragic it may be. For me, CUJO, the novel, is dark, but not as dark or as devastating as Pet Sematary, because the parent characters ultimately accept what has happened at the end. There is reconciliation, even forgiveness. In contrast, Pet Sematary is all about denial, refusal, and the pain wrought from these choices. Speaking of Pet Sematary and CUJO, wouldn't you love to see a mashup, a sort of prequel/sequel, where someone drags up the remains of this old St. Bernard and digs a grave for CUJO in the Micmac burial ground? Stephen King, if you are listening, I would definitely read that. Thank you for watching and listening to the Stephen King Book Club. As always, we appreciate how many people have left comments, how many people have subscribed, and of course, as always, a big thankful shout out of gratitude to our members at the Constant Watcher and #1 fan level. What book would you like us to analyze next? Leave a comment and let us know.